Gunther just signed a contract he thinks guarantees him the right to destroy Nick Aldis at SummerSlam, and he is so focused on the man sitting across that table that he completely missed the most dangerous person in the entire building. Adam Pearce, the man who wrote every single word of that contract. The man who is now running both Raw and SmackDown simultaneously. And the man who, if you've been paying close enough attention, has been quietly setting this trap for weeks. What's up, Tidal Wave, and welcome to the breakdown that everyone else is sleeping on heading into SummerSlam weekend. Because while the entire wrestling world is focused on whether Nick Aldis can actually hang with Gunther in a real match, nobody is asking the more important question: why does the guy who wrote the contract, arranged all the terms, and personally handed Gunther the pen look so calm about all of this? So here's the question worth sitting with before we go any further. In a business where authority figures always have an angle, when has Adam Pearce ever done anything purely out of the goodness of his heart? Let's lay out exactly what's confirmed, because the paper trail here is genuinely damning if you read it carefully. On the July 24th SmackDown in Oakland, Adam Pearce opened the show as both Raw General Manager and acting SmackDown General Manager, presented the contract, and personally announced every single term before either man signed. Term 1, once Aldis signs, WWE bears zero legal responsibility for anything that happens at SummerSlam. Term 2, Aldis relinquishes the SmackDown GM role immediately upon signing, with Pearce assuming permanent control of both shows on the spot. Gunther sat across the table smiling at the hold harmless clause, thinking it was his protection, thinking it meant he could do whatever he wanted to Aldis inside that ring. He didn't stop to ask who that clause actually protects most. Pearce wrote it. Pearce benefits from it too. And here's the detail that most fans completely glossed over on a night full of big moments. After the contract was signed, after Gunther powerbombed Aldis through the table, and the dust settled, Pearce gave an interview where Sami Zayn walked up and said out loud that neither Aldis nor Pearce ever wanted him as champion. He said the powers that be were always working against him. And Pearce didn't correct him, didn't defend himself, just stood there. That's a small moment that most people missed, but it tells you exactly what kind of authority figure Adam Pearce actually is when nobody's watching closely enough. Now, before we go any further, if you're locked into this breakdown, smash that like button and get plugged into the Tidal Wave family right now, because the history I'm about to connect between Pearce and Gunther goes back much further than this storyline, and it changes everything about what you're going to watch at SummerSlam. Here's what most fans don't remember because it happened during a different chapter. Pearce has already suspended Gunther before, on the record, when Gunther attacked commentary staff and Pearce came down hard on him with an indefinite suspension. Gunther doesn't forget things like that. But more importantly, Pearce doesn't either. This is a man who was forced to oversee both brands twice in recent months specifically because of Gunther's behavior. He had to cancel his own Raw plans, rearrange his entire schedule, and clean up Gunther's mess every single time the ring general decided to put his hands on someone. That is not the profile of a man who feels nothing watching Gunther powerbomb his colleague through a table at a contract signing he personally organized. That's a man keeping a very detailed mental ledger. And then there's this. On social media, right after the SummerSlam kickoff announcement, Pearce made a very specific, very deliberate comment. He said Gunther never dared to put his hands on him. Not that he was glad Gunther didn't. Not that he felt safe. He specifically called out the fact that Gunther drew a line in the sand, went after Aldis repeatedly, went after commentary, went after officials, but never touched Pearce himself. That's not casual small talk. That's a man reminding Gunther and the entire audience exactly where the boundary was drawn. And the most dangerous people in wrestling are never the ones drawing boundaries. They're the ones waiting for the right moment to cross them. Let's talk about Pearce's psychology for a second because this is the whole engine of the theory. This is a man who has been a trained professional wrestler his entire adult life, spent years as a respected in-ring talent before transitioning to authority figure, and has been quietly watching a younger, louder, more celebrated version of everything he used to be get handed opportunities, melt down repeatedly, and still somehow keep getting rewarded with main event matches. Pearce also happens to be a former NWA standout just like Aldis. Two men with almost identical career paths, both former world champions, both now in suits, both watching Gunther set the whole building on fire every other week. If there's anyone in that company who feels personally invested in seeing Gunther taken down a peg, It's the man who's had to personally manage the fallout of every single one of Gunther's explosions for the last several months. So here are 3 predictions heading into SummerSlam. 1. Pearce stays completely neutral throughout the match, lets it play out clean, and this entire theory ends up being nothing but a great story that never materializes. 2. Pearce interferes to help Aldis win, costing Gunther at the most critical moment possible, finally using that dual GM authority to settle every personal score at once in the biggest match of Aldis's career. And 3. The swing for the fences scenario. Pearce turns on Aldis instead, siding with Gunther in a shocking swerve, becoming the new villain of SmackDown and setting himself up as the man who controls both brands with a monster backing him up heading into the fall. One of these 3 things will happen. The only question is which one. Adam Pearce wrote every term of that contract, assumed control of both shows in the same breath, and has been quietly keeping score on Gunther since long before the storyline even started. Gunther is so focused on destroying Nick Aldis that he hasn't looked left once to check who's standing in that corner. So tell me, is Adam Pearce about to become Aldis's secret weapon at SummerSlam? Or is he the real final boss that neither man saw coming? Next video is going to blow the roof off. This has been Tidal Wave. Ride the wave.